talks to end the 5-month platinum strike were successful to a degree, but were it not for the intervention of a bishop and a lawyer, well, the platinum workers might yet still be on strike. That is what the international news agency Reuters reported this week in a in-depth analysis, talking to various of the people who were involved. And one of the key players is Advocate Dali Mpofu, who joins us here in our CNBC Africa studio. Dali, thanks for making the short trip from your chambers across the road.
Thanks, Alec.
But how did you get involved in the first place in trying to end the strike?
Yeah, well, it's a long story, Alec. As you might know, I've been involved with the MARIKANA Commission, with the community there, with the workers for almost 2 years now, since the tragedy of 2012. That led into a situation where actually this started last year. Last year there was a bit of commotion when the commemoration of the massacre was about to happen, with all sorts of stakeholders wanting to play a part. And the workers then decided that they wanted 3 people to drive that process. And they asked for me, Bishop Sioka and Mr. Matunjwa to be the drivers of that event. And it went off smoothly, you know, we accommodated all the political parties and so on. So jump over to now to the crisis with the strike. Ironically, it was the Deputy Minister of Minerals and Energy, whom I know from my ANC days very well, who suggested just after the elections, because he knew that I have a good relationship with Matunjwa and with the workers, whether I could assist in introducing them to Matunjwa, because they didn't know him.
The ANC didn't know him?
Yes, yeah. And what I thought could be done to end the impasse and so on. I then related to exactly what I've told you now and suggested that if you wanted me to be involved, we should also bring in the bishop, because, you know, of the credibility that we already enjoyed with the workers and with AMCU, which might, you know, be capital that can be used. And one thing led to another. Thereafter, the new minister was appointed, and when he started his process, then Matunjwa suggested that I should get involved, because I suppose he also doesn't know the ANC people that well as much as I do. So he was quite wanted to know from me, can we trust this one, can we trust that one? So I had to play that kind of
So
role.
it is historic. You have a level of trust, a high degree of trust,
very
and so does the bishop as well. But
absolutely.
But the Reuters story suggests that the influence of the minister was more destructive than adding any value. Is that accurate?
Not completely. Look, surprisingly, the Reuters story has got some very good details. I don't know, whoever they spoke to obviously was one of the insiders, yeah. But there are some inaccuracies. No, I think the minister was well-meaning. I think he really wanted to, you know, shine for whatever reasons and resolve
this. I suppose new job.
Yes, new job. You want to do one quick win kind of thing, yeah, which is understandable. But I think the tragic part is the fact that clearly the ANC had jitters about a solution coming through, and I suspect the real reason was very sinister, because they thought that should a victory come to AMCU, that would spell the doom of NUM. So they are withdrawing the minister, or forcing him to withdraw abruptly, as you know.
So who forced him?
I think
the caucus.
Yeah. Yes, it was exactly what happened is that we actually had a meeting on the Friday where we had made some progress with the minister, and I had even suggested, I had said, look, let's meet the following Monday, close the door, and, you know, we just don't leave. If it's going to take us 5 days, we're just going to sit there. And that was the kind of understanding. All of a sudden, on the Saturday, the minister called a press conference. There was an NEC Lekgotla going on. So obviously, during that Lekgotla, he was arm-twisted to withdraw, so that we shouldn't find a solution.
Well, instructed, probably more than
literally.
Than
yeah, well, you could even tell. I mean,
So what happened on the Monday was you arrived there with, all of a sudden, it appeared as though everything was going to, the talks would collapse.
Yeah.
That certainly was the feedback that came to us.
Yeah.
And yet you managed to pull something out the fire.
We did. Well, that Monday, the minister basically said, look, you know, this is what's going to happen. You guys carry on, goodbye, kind of thing. And we said, no. Even in your statement, you said you are going to, use Monday to do the last ditch. So you're going to be here, and indeed he agreed. He sat with us and tried to assist. But we couldn't find a solution that day, and therefore we had to find other means, which is how the Palazzo Hotel and the story in the Reuters then, because we then, once the government was out of it, for whatever reason, we then had to find solutions among ourselves.
Why did it take so long, and why did it cost so much?
Well, look, initially, I think that the question of trust, and I really think that really is the central thing. Between, I brought in skills as a lawyer and, as a former CEO, as a former unionist and so on. The bishop brought the soft skills and so on, and Matunja obviously brought the legitimacy of being the union leader. But if you cut through all those differences, the central thing was the trust. The issue was that the three of us were people who were trusted very immensely by the union leadership and also by the workers themselves.
And you trusted Ben Magara from Lonman, but presumably not so much the other two chief executives. Because you met with him, not with him.
Yes. No, that's because, again, Ben Magara and the three, what we are referred to since last year as the Three Musketeers. Yeah. So Ben Magara has a history with the Three Musketeers, as it were. And he himself knew the value that that would bring. And he used it optimally, I think, to his credit. Whenever there was a log jam, he would say, look, let's have breakfast with the Three Musketeers, and we would go off to some place and have breakfast in the morning. One time they even we even had to have we had a meeting in a hotel that is next to where the MARIKANA Commission is, because I was busy cross-examining somebody, and they said, look, even if we just take your tea time, we'll come to you. So Magara, the bishop, and Matunja drove to that place so that when I have lunch I can spend half an hour and knock off whatever problem there was and then rush back there.
I was very interested to see that, because many of us thought the only way the strike would end would be through divine intervention.
Yeah.
That you prayed before,
we did,
and you prayed after.
And
so there could have been, we've had it in South Africa before, divine intervention. Perhaps
absolutely
it happened here too, and hence the bishops.
The bishop played a major role, because look, some of us can be hot-headed and want to bring things to a head or get frustrated, and he was the calming influence on all of us to say, look, take it easy, walk around the block, come back, and so on. And
the nation owes you a debt for this, and I don't know if everybody appreciates quite how much destructive it could have been right now.
What could have happened? Yeah, the starvation that was going on there in those communities was just that.
But the whole economic impact. Yes. But Dali, was this an economic strike, or was this ideological?
Look, it's a bit of both. People say, look, it was political, was it economic? There's no strike that is purely... In South Africa, as you know, we are a very politicized society. There's no strike that can be purely economic. Obviously, issues such as the historical conditions of where the mine workers are, their real gripe was this. 20 years after liberation, we are still living in filthy hostels. There's not been a jump in our wages, which were obviously set at a time when we were looked at as inferior. And one of the most enduring things that people would say to me was, look, we're prepared to go through this to the death, as it were. Why? They would say, look, our grandfathers suffered through this, our fathers suffered through this, we are suffering through this, we don't want our children to suffer through this. So it was much more, you couldn't argue with that kind of thing at the level of rands and cents. It was emotion, it was history, it was politics, all rolled into one. And that's why I think it went on for so long, and that's why there was so much determination to see it through. And sometimes logic didn't come into it.
But the logic of this, obviously, and you're an educated man, you know that if costs go up of anything, you have less of it in future.
Yeah.
So did the workers or AMCU say, okay, we know that it's going to be higher prices, there'll be less of us employed, but at least those who are employed are going to be better looked after?
Yeah. No, look, sometimes we underestimate the intelligence or the collective intelligence of those people simply because they're not educated. But, it's even the idea of putting together a team like myself and the bishop and Matunja is something, it was basically their own creativity. And no matter how you brought the economic arguments and so on, once, as you know, once issues have become emotional and are laced with history and this and the other, then people would say, look, we understand that. We understand that we're suffering now, but let's rather suffer now so that in the long term, those who are employed in the future can be better rewarded.
One hopes that lessons have been learned here, particularly on trust and on communication. Dali, before you go, you were the CEO at the SABC. There's been all kinds of reactions, including a development today.
Yeah. Well, I'd rather not go there, but all I can say is that, yeah, it's pathetic when we get to a situation where skills are not valued. Where the message that we send to young people is that you don't have to work hard to get those degrees or to acquire those skills. All you need is just to be connected. We all have said that myself, I'm not against cadre deployment, but I always say that even if you're going to deploy people who agree with you politically, first and foremost, they must have the skills to do what they have to do. Because it discredits the whole notion of transformation. If you're literally going to grab some guy from the taxi rank and say, you know, go and do Alec Hog's job, that cannot be what it's about. It has to be about skills. It has to be about ensuring that job is a very complex job. I can tell you that.
Well, you know from the inside.
Yeah, in many ways, the job of the COO at the SABC is even more complex than the CEO's job. So I don't understand how anyone who allegedly does not have a metric can even do it at all.
Dali Mpofu, thank you.